And hello and welcome to another video on ChatGPT prompt engineering for developers. So what I'm gonna do here, okay, is going to first the Notion, since I'm keep tracking my progress, okay, on the ChatGPT engineering here. Let me take a look at the timeline here. So I intend to finish this course by uh, Thursday, okay, May 30. And so far, what I have done is, look at the intro, so understand about the course detail as well as the introduction, uh, something that uh, Andrew and G mentioned, that even though that you are able to look at several articles out there on the internet, say things like 30 prompts everybody has to know, which are more oriented to the ChatGPT web interface, where a lot of people often use for one-off tasks. The power of this is, according to Andrew and G, for developers, is that allows to build applications much more quickly by interacting with this LLM API, especially with the Open AI. And once I look at that and how he mentioned that deep learning, deep learning.ai, deep learning.ai, which is their company, which is his company, uh, build your AI career with deeplearning.ai. Okay, AI for everyone, machine learning specialization, deep learning specialization. So is this okay? Uh, so he described that he has a sister company called AI Fund, okay, AI which is a sister company of deep learning that is focused on how they can build okay, so how they can build applications using LLMs. Okay, so this is the AI fund. All right, cool. And they also have here careers like open jobs, like that. So let's build the future together. Jobs company, jobs at AI fund. Interesting. Uh, so yeah, he mentioned that in the development of LLM, we have broadly two types: the base LLM, which predict what is the next most likely word. So, for example, if you prompt things like "Once upon a time there was a magical unicorn," the model will likely to complete with "that lived in a magical forest." So, when you now prompt things like add questions or directives such as "what is the capital of France?" the model will likely to complete that with "what is the French largest city?" or "what is the France population?" So what is the currency of France? Because articles on the internet that this model use are highly likely to have question about the country of France. So in contrast, we have now this instruction tune LLM, where they attempt to follow instructions, and the way you work that, or the way how it works, or how you start to train this LLM is you have a base LLM that you train them with a huge amount of data, and then for the training to turn in, uh, yeah, and then you further, yeah, and then and then you further training to turning uh, with input and outputs that attempts to follow instructions. So people behind the scenes that train this model make the model much more helpful, harmless, and honest. So it is less likely to have problematic or toxic output. And also they use refined techniques like reinforced learning with human feedback. So with that, okay, Andrew says, think of this LLM models as a smart person that doesn't know the details. So it is helpful for them to provide context. And with that introduction, then I look at the guidelines, especially the principle of how to write effective prompts, such as clear or write clear and specific instructions, as well as define or give the model time to think, as well as several tactics involved. So, for example, like use the limiters that indicate the model distinct part of your input. Limiters like triple quotes, backticks, dashes, angle bracket, or XML tags. Ask for structured data such as JSON, HTML, or any other format. Less or comma separated value as well. Check whether the conditions are satisfied, and few shotting, meaning provide couple of successful examples to complete the task, and then let the model to complete the task. And other principles, especially when you give time the model um, to do the task, uh, is much like when you ask for a person to give you an answer on a complex math problem without giving them proper time to figuring out to work out the solution first, so they're likely to give it wrong. So in this case, when that happens, when you get incorrect conclusions, so do or try to reframe that. By that is, well, set a specific step to complete the task, which is one of the tactics. The other, give the model or instruct the model to work out the solution before rushing to a conclusion. Okay? And then I look at now the iterative process, especially for prompt engineering. This behaves somewhat similar, or is very similar, to the machine learning development, where you have an idea and then you implement the code or the data, you get the results, analyze the experimental results, you see why you don't get the result that you get it, or the desired output by doing this error analysis, and then you complete. So this is on the uh, iterative prompt development, or in this case, the machine learning development, which is behaves somewhat similar to the prompt development. You have an idea, you write that instructions, okay? So analyze why you don't get your desired output. Most of the times, that's what happens, and if you get it, that's right, that's great. But if you're not, uh, analyze why you don't get it, that result, refine your prompt, and then repeat the process. So with that, okay, so for early prompt development, this is somewhat useful, and this is actually useful, and for one example. But when you want to scale that, okay, to multiple of or for dozens of examples, it is important to analyze the performance of those results, average and worst case scenarios on that. Okay, so then I look at the different use case, such as summarizing. This is something very, very important, especially in the today world, that we don't have the time to read important things or things that we like to read or we wish uh, to have time to do that. So using ChatGPT to summarize helps you vastly, and using keywords or topics for prompting. Yeah, so prompt keywords and topics like summarizing or extracting, especially for a particular use case, like let's say you have, so for lawyers, right? They have to read a lot of documents, and they don't have the time to do that. Well, you can develop an application that, well, once you digitize all of this document, okay, you create this application to summarize the entire or all the entire folder in a way that makes or in a way that gives the lawyer a quick sense of what's in that text, and optionally provide a link or a button to dig in more if they wish. Okay, so this is a great use case for summarizing, okay, for lawyers or for any people that needs to have with huge amount of data, especially text, for that, and you want to make sense of this. I don't know if this actually can be applied, for example, to financial reports. So for example, when you pass, that might be something interesting as well. So when you pass, for example, balance sheets, income statement, or mhm, balance sheets, income statements, or uh, how do you say that? Yeah, balance sheets, income statement, or a cash flow statement. Okay, that might be a one particularly interesting way to apply that. Okay, just an application here. Set uh, summarize, for example, flow summarize cash flow statement by asking the model if a company generate cash, okay, and how much cash it generate, and how much cash it generate from operating, yeah, and how much cash it generate, and they go into the specific, right? The other is inferring. So for each one of those tasks or use case, so Isafulford mentioned that you can think of them as, or in which the model takes the text input and then performs some sort of analysis, extract names, extract uh, labels, understanding the sentiment behind that, behind a particular text, that kind of thing. So Andrew and G mentioned that, especially when or before, when you want to extract or to, yeah, when you want to identify the sentiment in a text, in the traditional machine learning workflow, you have is to collect the labeled data sets, then train the model. Okay, so collect the labeled data sets, train the model, and figuring out a way and a place to deploy that model on the internet. So this process is pretty, it works pretty well, but it's highly demanding in work. So if you want to, for example, do other tasks like extracting names, so now you have to deploy a different model. Okay, so one of the things that this large language model allows as developer is that we can quickly get the results by prompt or by just write a prompt, which improve the application development vastly. That's one. The reason is, for what purpose? So what is the end goal of improving the application development? By writing this prompt to the LLM. Okay, it can be based on this particular use case. And the other is the simplicity, because now with by having is one model, one API that can perform multiple different tests, that's actually great. So rather than having to figuring out how to train and deploy a lot of different models. So the prompt keyword for inferring is that, well, sentiment is one of them. So identify the type of emotion, extract or information extraction. So identify names or identify company or product names. Doing multiple tasks at once. Remember, following is the principle. Okay, and inferring topics. So, for example, extract the number of topics and count them on a particular text. Okay, then I look at the transforming, and here in the transforming, again, Andrew mentioned that LLM, large language models, are very good at transforming its input into a different format, whether it is by translating from one natural language to another, English to Spanish, or helping with spelling and grammar corrections, or even transforming formats. Okay, or even transforming formats such as HTML to a JSON. And I saw full formation that she used ChatGPT to pretty much proofread everything she writes. And this proofread in Spanish is corrección de texto, corrección de gramática. Proofread everything she writes. So the prompt keyword topic of this is translate language identification. So translate this text, okay? Language identification, so formal or informal forms. So when you address to a senior or in a professional manage, the formal or informal forms, the tone transformation, the tonality, the format conversion. So meaning is that make it something more casual or make a particular text much more professional. Okay, and then spell and grammar check. So now let's take a look at the couple examples on this transforming. Okie dokie. All right. Hello. You're not gonna.
Large language models are very
Okay.
good at
Didn't load the Jupyter notebook environment. What about now? And it's actually, I don't see it's doing it. What about if I change it to inferring? I see the letters here, this loading letters. So if I move here to the transforming, what about now? Interesting. Okay. Hello. What? Come on, man. Come on, man. What? We don't load this. Okay. Let me see what's going on here in the console. The error default store. Wait, what? It's because this is made on React. Okay, anyway. All right. There's some course error here. This is from error. It's error management. Type error network errors. Fail to fetch this resource. What if I log out here and then I sign in again? Okay. Hello. Are you there, my friend? Okay, Jesus. Okay, because this is my password manager. Okay, I thought I installed that. Hmm. Hmm. So let me close that. Okay, close the password manager. So I just want to install that quickly. Let's go to install that, repair. Sometimes some files I need to update in the current use. Yeah, close the proxy for that. Shutting down applications. It seems that I need to close here the browser. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, I need to close the browser. Okay, it seems that installed that properly. Okay, let me open again the browser. I don't see that you're able to see that. That's right. Okay. Okie dokie. And there we go. So jump to the, what is the browser? The browser tab. There you got it. Oh no, not at all. Okay, so let me sign in again to deeplearning.ai. All right, cool. Why didn't it detect that? It's because it's closed. For some reason, it doesn't detect that. Anyway. What? That? That's right. Welcome back. Thanks. Because I linked that to LinkedIn. Anyway, and then we are in transforming. Okay, now can you load the Jupyter Notebook environment? Will you? Jesus. Will you? My God. Come on. Please. Okay. 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 Um, will you? Okay. Anyway. You know what? Anyway. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. ChatGPT here. Okay. But well, because it doesn't want to load the Jupyter notebook, all right, and I can find ways to force the loading. So what I can do is, well, here is to understand what are the topics that, or the prompts and keywords, prompts, keywords, topics, especially when that you can apply when transforming. Okay? The first is translate. Okay? So translate me from translate a particular input text to another language, whether it's English to Spanish or French. Okay, so translate, language identification. Okay, also it can translate from one format to another, which is format conversion for HTML to a JSON or any other input or input format that the model can accept. Okay. Also, it can transform from formal to informal forms. For example, when you want to address to a junior, when you want to address to a senior, or in a professional manner. Okay. Tone transformation. Okay, as well as spell and grammar check. So, because it doesn't even want to load the Jupyter notebook, let's go to expanding here.
Expanding is the task of taking a shorter piece of text, such as a set of instructions or a list of topics, and having the large language model generate a longer piece of text, such as an email or an essay about some topic. There are some great uses of this, such as if you use a large language model as a brainstorming partner. But I just also want to acknowledge that there's some problematic use cases of this, such as if someone were to use it to generate a large amount of spam. So when you use these capabilities of a large language model, please use it only in a responsible way and in a way that helps people.
In this video, we'll go through an example of how you can use a language model to generate a personalized email based on some information. The email is kind of self-proclaimed to be from an AI bot, which, as Andrew mentioned, is very important. We're also going to use another one of the model's input parameters called temperature, and this kind of allows you to vary the kind of degree of exploration and variety in the kind of model's responses. So let's get into it. So before we get started, we're going to kind of do the usual setup. So set up the OpenAI Python package and then also define our helper function getCompletion. And now we're going to write a custom email response to a customer review. And so given a customer review and the sentiment, we're going to generate a custom response. Now we're going to use the language model to generate a custom email to a customer based on a customer review and the sentiment of the review. So we've already extracted the sentiment using the kind of prompts that we saw in the Inferring video. And then this is the customer review for a blender. And now we're going to customize the reply based on the sentiment. And so here the instruction is, you are a customer service AI assistant. Your task is to send an email reply to a valued customer. Given the customer email delimited by 3 backticks, generate a reply to thank the customer for their review. If the sentiment is positive or neutral, thank them for their review. If the sentiment is negative, apologize and suggest that they can reach out to customer service. Make sure to use specific details from the review, write in a concise and professional tone, and sign the email as AI Customer Agent. And when you're using a language model to generate text that you're going to show to a user, it's very important to have this kind of transparency and let the user know that the text they're seeing was generated by AI. And then we'll just input the customer review and the review sentiment. And also note that this part isn't necessarily important because we could actually use this prompt to also extract the review sentiment and then in a follow-up step, write the email. But just for the sake of the example, well, we've already extracted the sentiment from the review. And so here we have a response to the customer. It addresses details that the customer mentioned in their review. And kind of as we instructed, suggests that they reach out to customer service because this is just an AI customer service agent. Next, we're going to use a parameter of the language model called temperature that will allow us to change the kind of variety of the model's responses. So you can kind of think of temperature as the degree of exploration or kind of randomness of the model. And so for this particular phrase, my favorite food is, the kind of most likely next word that the model predicts is pizza, and the kind of next to most likely it suggests are sushi and tacos. And so at a temperature of 0, the model will always choose the most likely next word, which in this case is pizza. And at a higher temperature, it will also choose one of the less likely words, and at an even higher temperature, it might even choose tacos, which only kind of has a 5% chance of being chosen. And you can imagine that kind of as the model continues this final response, so my favorite food is pizza, and it kind of continues to generate more words, this response will kind of diverge from the response, the first response, which is my favorite food is tacos. And so as the kind of model continues, these two responses will become more and more different. In general, when building applications where you want a predictable response, I would recommend using temperature zero. Throughout all of these videos, we've been using temperature zero, and I think that if you're trying to build a system that is reliable and predictable, you should go with this. If you're trying to use the model in a more creative way where you might want a kind of wider variety of different outputs, you might want to use a higher temperature. So now let's take this same prompt that we just used and let's try generating an email, but let's use a higher temperature. So in our getCompletion function that we've been using throughout the videos, we have kind of specified a model and then also a temperature, but we've kind of set them to default. So now let's try varying the temperature. So we use the prompt and then let's try temperature 0.7. And so with temperature 0, every time you execute the same prompt, you should expect the same completion.
Okay.
Whereas with temperature 0.7, you'll get a different output every time. So here we have our email, and as you can see, it's different to the email that we kind of received previously. And let's just execute it again to show that we'll get a different email again. And here we have another different email. And so I recommend that you kind of play around with temperature yourself. Maybe you could pause the video now and try this prompt with a variety of different temperatures just to see how the outputs vary. So to summarize, at higher temperatures, the outputs from the model are kind of more random. You can almost think of it as that at higher temperatures, the assistant is more distractible, but maybe more creative. In the next video, we're going to talk more about the chat completions endpoint format and how you can create a custom chatbot using this format.
Okay, so that'll be all for this video. Take care. Bye-bye.